The night our ride died in front of that abandoned house, I knew something was wrong long before the engine quit. Not because of the road or the weather, but because of the eyes. Not human eyes. Headlights. A pair of them, too bright, too still, following us for miles, without ever passing, never slowing, never speeding up. Just watching. If you're still here, trust me, this gets worse. Much worse. We were three in the car, me, Johnny, and Mia, killing time on the long way home, driving a stretch of Route 47 we knew too well. A boring road. Empty fields, no streetlights, just the kind of darkness that makes your reflection in the window like a stranger. Johnny joked that the car behind us was probably just lost. Mia didn't laugh. She kept glancing at the mirror, chewing her mint until her jaw clicked. Then the road narrowed. The guardrails disappeared. And through the trees, half buried in shadow, we saw it. The house. It sat too far back from the road, angled like it was listening. The porch light was dead, the windows were gray and dusty, and one of them reflected our headlights in a way that looked wrong, like it was focusing on us. I swear the air changed. Cold, damp, sweet, like rotting fruit. Before we could comment on it, the radio crackled, then died. Johnny tapped the screen. Static. He tried the ignition. Click, click. Then nothing. The whole car went dark in the middle of the road, right in front of that house. Alternator, Johnny muttered, stepping out, but his voice sounded thin, like it wasn't sure. Mia climbed out next, rubbing her arms. "We'll just wave someone down," she said, trying to sound casual. But no one passed. No one ever passed that stretch after dark. Except the car that had been tailing us. Its headlights were still there, still pointed at us, still unmoving. And for the first time, I noticed something terrifying. It wasn't idling. There was no engine sound at all. Just silence. And that house watching us from the field. Johnny unlatched the hood. Steam didn't whisk out, just the ordinary smell of an engine cooling into itself and the faint rot of damp leaves blown up from the ditch. Behind us, the BMW had pulled over and stopped a little farther back, lights still glaring. A light in the BMW's cabin flicked. Someone checking a phone, maybe? But they didn't get out. "I'll walk up to that house," Johnny said, before either of us could stop him. He laughed at his own boldness. It wobbled. I should have argued. Mia mouthed my name like a warning, and then kept it to herself. The gravel crunched under Johnny's boots on the walk toward the porch. The headlights of the car painted him in a long oval. The BMW's lights made another pair of ovals behind him. As he reached the first step, something made me think of thresholds, of the air changing on the other side of a door. It's terrible how small instincts taste when you ignore them. Johnny reached for the knob and tugged. It stuck, then gave with a whining sound that echoed in the empty rooms beyond. He didn't call back. For a second, he wasn't there at all. He was a silhouette, swallowed by the inside. We stood by the hood of the Civic and listened. A slow tick of cooling metal, the rumble of highway far off, and then, under it, a soft, rhythmic sound like something being dragged across wood. "Johnny?" Mia said, and the word folded into the house. The BMW's driver got out then, walked over to stand behind their own car. They watched us with their hands shoved in their pockets. Johnny pulled the door wider. A smell came out with it. Dust, old paper, lemon oil, and something else that made the back of my throat tighten, like cloves steeping in rainwater. He stepped into the doorway and immediately recoiled, covering his face for a second as if the air had slapped him. There's a few old things," he said, voice thin. "Looks like a shrine or—" He laughed, but it was small and lacked his usual swagger. Mia squeezed my sleeve. "We should get him then," she said. I remember pushing past the threshold because once you cross something, you can't unsee. You act like you already have an answer. The entryway was narrow. The light from the door cut a rectangle on the floorboards that trembled under our feet. The house smelled of poper and candle smoke. Moth wings glinted in the beam of my phone. On the wall, there was a nailed-up square of wood with objects pinned to it: old coins, a child's shoe, a faded Polaroid of someone who smiled like they had been told the joke right before a photo. Everything looked carefully placed, as if someone had been making an altar from lost things. "Who would leave this?" Johnny breathed. He lifted a coin with a gloved finger. It had a square hole in the middle, greened with age. "This is weird. This is like someone cleaned up a grave or something." Mia laughed, but there was a wobble. "Okay, trivia night answer: haunted house." We moved through the small rooms, careful not to touch anything that felt like it had a story. A hallway opened to the back, where a curtain hung like a thin skin, and when Johnny drew it aside, there was a shelf of jars lined up like teeth. Inside some jar lids were ribbons, others had bones. Not whole bodies, just small fragments, bleached and clean, like raw keys. I couldn't look for long. The idea of bones in jars was wrong in a way that made my skin prickle. I turned my head and pretended I was taking in the wallpaper. "Find anything useful?" Mia called from the kitchen, where she had lifted a dust-coated ceramic plate and found, underneath, a folded note. Johnny didn't answer. The light of the BMW had gone. The car was gone. The street outside the window was black. That absence felt enormous in that house, full of things. I should have called his name again, louder. Instead, I found myself reading the note. It said someone's name, a date, and a line that could have been a prayer or a warning. I remember my fingers trembling while I traced the letters. There was a sound from the hallway then, a soft scrape, as if something had been dragged along the floor. It was close to the tone we'd heard when the door opened. The house inhaled around that noise. I followed the sound. Johnny was in the parlor, where the wallpaper had peeled in long sheets. He was kneeling by a low table, turned toward the back door that led into the yard. The back door was ajar. Night reached in like a black hand. Johnny turned his head slowly, and the phone's light caught on his face, pale, eyes wide. He didn't move his mouth. He only pointed with one finger toward the open back door. His hand was shaking. "Someone's outside," Mia asked, but there was nothing else in her voice. We went out without thinking about locking the door. The porch sagged under our weight. The yard was awash of moonlight and shadow, and beyond the yard, the field fell away into a ditch. Tire tracks cut into the grass like the path of something that didn't plan to return. The air tasted of wet hay and something metallic, like pennies left in rain. There were footprints in the mud, leading away from the house, larger than any of ours, dragging, as if someone had walked with their feet half-turned. They seemed to circle a low mound at the edge of the property, where a stand of pine trees made a small hollow. In that hollow, there was a glow, small, orange, like a match held to the ground. Johnny started toward it, and then the world did that thing where it snaps into motion with too many right answers. The headlights of a truck flared along the road, then dimmed suddenly as the driver slowed. The BMW must have been turning around to see if we needed help. But the truck did not stop. Instead, it rolled on with its own pair of eyes fixed straight ahead. The glow in the hollow pulsed like a pulse. Johnny reached it first and crouched. I remember the smell then, hot wax, the sharpness of gasoline, and beneath it something earthier that made me remember grave dirt without wanting to. There was an impression in the hollow like someone had brushed the grass into a small nest. In that nest were objects: a child's shoe, a handful of pennies tied with twine, a small, cracked doll face, and another of those coins with the square hole. Nothing alive. Everything arranged. Johnny picked up the doll face and turned it over in his hands, as if it might tell him what to do next. "You found it," he said, voice small. He looked at me like he needed a witness to believe the world hadn't just tilted. "Might be someone's shrine," Mia said. "Somebody's keeper." We had that argument then, the one that always happens when you stand beside danger and have to make a decision. We could walk back to the car, call someone, leave. We could wait for the BMW to come back and try to ask for a jump. Instead, Johnny sank down cross-legged on the ground and put the doll face and coins in the middle of the hollow, then set his glove on top like a small, ridiculous offering. "I think they want company," he said, half smiling. He sounded far away. I didn't want to see what kind of acceptance there was in his voice. We sat there, 3 of us, under a sky leaking stars, and listened. From somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice and then stopped. The truck's engine dimmed and receded entirely. The hollow held our small light like a pocket. I remember thinking about small obligations, the way we leave notes for roommates, the way we promise to be home, the way we promise we won't go into places that ask for attention. Then Johnny laughed, soft and surprised, and said we should come back with more. It sounded like a promise that had already been broken. The sound started again then, that faint scrap of something on wood, close to the house, moving along the porch like a creature testing planks. Johnny's laugh stopped. He stood up, slowly, and for the first time since we'd left the car, he looked genuinely afraid. "Maybe we should go," Mia said, and her voice was steady with a fear that would not let itself be shrugged off. I wanted to agree. Instead, I found my legs moving toward the house, toward the door we had left open. We didn't get more than a few steps when the car lights flashed on down the road and a car door slammed. Someone shouted, one quick cry, not a call for help, more like the initiation of motion. A foot on the gas, the rev of an engine. A set of lights swung around the bend and swept across the field. For a second, everything was overexposed, our faces washed out, our shadows long and ridiculous. Then the lights passed and the dark returned. When we reached the porch, the back door hung closed. The shrine inside the house was different. Coins rearranged, the doll face pushed to the side, a new smaller shoe tucked under the low table that hadn't been there a minute before. We looked at one another without speaking, each of us doing the same mental arithmetic. Did someone else come while we were in the hollow? Had someone been watching from the trees? Johnny's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he fumbled it out. A message, a single word, from a number he didn't recognize. It said, "Stay." The sender name was blank. The timestamp showed a minute ago. Every instinct screamed that we should leave then. We should have ran to the car, locked the doors, and driven until the empty fields were only a memory. But the house had that gravity, like a story that insists you stay until the end. Johnny folded the phone and slid it back. "It's probably a prank," he said, but that lie sounded like a broken hinge. We turned to walk back, toward the car, toward the safety of familiarity, and the BMW's headlights blinked down the road again, slow and patient, not approaching. As we reached the Civic, I glanced at the road behind us and saw movement. 2 figures standing where the BMW had been, half shadow, watching us from the shoulder. They didn't wave, they didn't call, they only stood. The engine turned over when Johnny tried it, fine as a church bell. He put the car in drive, and we pulled onto the road. For a breathless stretch, we drove with nothing but the radio and our own breathing. Then, at the bend where the road split toward town, the Civic gave a shudder, a hiccup, and the lights died, whole and immediate. We coasted. Johnny cursed and pushed the ignition. Nothing. The BMW glided up behind us and stopped. The 2 figures stepped out like they had been waiting in a doorway. One of them came to our window and peered in. Light caught a face that was too young and too blank, no small print of a life, just skin and the hungry geometry of pupils. "Need a lift?" the person asked, voice flat as a ledger. There was no kindness in it. It wasn't a question either. Johnny said nothing. He put the keys in his pocket and rolled down the window an inch. "Where to?" the figure asked again, as if reading a route we hadn't even chosen. Mia reached for the door handle. Her hand left a smear on the glass. "No thanks," she said too quietly. She didn't say anything about phones or about calling someone. Her hand hovered over the lock, and then she forced a laugh that sounded like someone trying to clear frost from a windshield. I remember the smell then, stronger and undeniable, cigarette smoke and wet leaves, and something beneath that made my throat close, like old pennies and river mud mixed with something like sweet rot. The figure's breath fogged the glass. They smiled without moving their mouth properly, like something misaligned. "We can help," the figure said. "We can take you where you need." Johnny pulled the car door open and climbed out so fast his knees hit the road. He walked away from us toward the two figures. He didn't look back. He didn't turn to tell us what he was thinking, if he even had time to think. He walked in a straight line as if someone had marked him with a string. I grabbed at him then. My hand closed on his sleeve. His skin was cold. "Johnny," I started, and I remember hearing the scrape again, closer now, coming from the edge of the trees. The two figures didn't move. They just watched, with that same calm emptiness. He shook me off and smiled, too brightly, and said, "They said they know where there's a working phone. Come on." He sounded like someone repeating a line he'd read in a play. Mia stood frozen, eyes blown wide. "Don't," she said into the road. "Don't go." Johnny looked at us, at Mia, at me, and for an instant the old Johnny flickered through. The prankster with pockets full of candy, the one who would change the radio station when you weren't looking. Then the light hit his face in a way that rearranged it. He seemed to shrink. "We can help," the figure said. "We can take you where you need." Johnny pulled the car door open and climbed out so fast his knees hit the road. He walked away from us toward the two figures. He didn't look back. He didn't turn to tell us what he was thinking, if he even had time to think. He walked in a straight line as if someone had marked him with a string. I grabbed at him then. My hand closed on his sleeve. His skin was cold. "Johnny," I started, and I remember hearing the scrape again, closer now, coming from the edge of the trees. The two figures didn't move. They just watched, with that same calm emptiness. He shook me off and smiled, too brightly, and said, "They said they know where there's a working phone. Come on." He sounded like someone repeating a line he'd read in a play. Mia stood frozen, eyes blown wide. "Don't," she said into the road. Johnny looked at us, at Mia, at me, and for an instant the old Johnny flickered through. The prankster with pockets full of candy, the one who would change the radio station when you weren't looking. Then the light hit his face in a way that rearranged it. He seemed to shrink. "I'll be right back," he said, and turned toward the figures as if they'd been waiting to show him something only he could see. "I think," I yelled. It was something like that. Small, sharp, not even a word. My hand tightened on his sleeve until his collarbone hit my fingers. He did not look down. He kept walking until the two figures matched his stride, and they folded together like paper. One movement, and they were gone into the shoulder where the ditch sloped and the trees swallowed them. I don't remember the dash turning red, or the radio blaring, or the moment the world decided to re-enter rules. I remember only the hollow where 3 people had been, 3 shadows gone, and our breath making little ghosts in the air. Mia's phone slipped out of her hand, and she collapsed to her knees on the cold tar, hands over her mouth, eyes full of a dark animal sound. We called his name until it turned into a song without melody. We ran into the ditch with flashlights swinging like flares, the beams cutting the long grass into slices. The footprint trail ended at the edge of the pines, right where the hollow was, and there, in the dirt, were prints, 3 sets, but only 2 leading back to the road. One set, Johnny's, stopped abruptly, as if the earth had decided to keep him. We searched until my phone died and until the streetlights winked out with the approach of dawn. The sheriff drove up a mile later with coffee staining his jacket, and his face had the expression of someone who had seen this sort of thing enough to know how to be polite while offering no real promises. He read us a list of possibilities: runaway, prank, staged disappearance. He wrote our names down, asked about temperaments and debts. He asked if we'd been drinking. He asked if Johnny had enemies. There are questions that spin like rusty keys and never open anything. I told the sheriff about the shrine. He gave a thin, professional frown and made a note. We went back in the daylight with men in boots and a dog that sniffed and refused to signal anything decisive. In the yard, there was a circle of flattened grass where we'd sat, the small nest of objects all gone, as if someone had cleaned up and left a small apology. Late that afternoon, they found something in a hollow 2 miles downstream. A cluster of coins wrapped in twine, a child's shoe without a mate, a Polaroid half burned at the edge, and one of those little coins with the square hole. They called it evidence. They took pictures. The dog refused to signal. There was no body. There was no trace of Johnny. People in town were kind at first. Extra casseroles, quiet offers to help search. Then life, relentless and ordinary, folded back over their shoulders. The school's bleachers filled with teenagers who had their own small dramas. The coffee shop never stopped playing the same playlist. We learned the shapes of condolence. The nod, the sigh, the shifting of a conversation that used to include Johnny into memories that sounded smaller than he had been. At night now, when I drive past that stretch of road, because I have to, because the world expects me to move, and because the route is short and nothing else makes sense, I watch for lights in the trees. I watch for a car that will slow down and swing its headlights like a net. I find my palms sweating against the wheel at the exact bend where the house becomes visible. Once, months later, the Civic's engine hiccuped in the same way, and a text came through my phone with a single word, stay. I still think about the way Johnny smiled before he walked into the shoulder. I still think about the shrine, someone's careful altar of lost things, and the way the house rearranged itself while we left. Sometimes I tell myself it was all human cruelty, a stupid prank, some local kids who knew how to move through dark places without souls. Other times, I am certain of less savory things, the feeling of being watched, not by eyes, but by attention itself, like a pressure. People asked if I blamed myself. I do. I blame the hesitation that let him walk away. I blame the small cowardice that made me stay put when he crossed into those trees. I blame the fact that I didn't drag him back by the collar and take him home screaming until his mom beat us both with a dish towel. Guilt sits inside me like an unlit candle. It doesn't melt so much as harden, keeping its shape. Mia moved across town after the funeral notices stopped appearing in my feed. She still texts sometimes, short things like timestamps of weather or a photograph of a plain sky. We don't talk about that night the way we used to. Sometimes, drunk at a party, we'll make a joke about that abandoned house, like we can talk around it and make it smaller. The joke never lands. It always folds back into silence. I've thought more than once about going back alone, about bringing a camera or a priest or a man with a hammer, about naming the things I saw so that they would be mortal. But every time I slow the car at that bend and look at the house, something inside me refuses to turn the wheel. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's respect, maybe it's the feeling that the house keeps a ledger, and that if you go in to take back what was lost, the house will want something from you to balance the books. The last time I went by, the porch light was on, faint, burnt orange, like a cigarette left smoldering in a saucer. There was no car, no footprints. I stopped across the street and watched. From inside the dim window, I thought I saw movement, a shirt sleeve, the outline of a person who turned toward me and lifted a hand, as if in goodbye or hello. My engine stalled, and I sat there with my heart slamming like a fist against my ribs. And then the person blinked out, like someone turning off a screen. I drove away. I haven't driven past in months. At home, my nightmares are full of small, domestic things pulled into wrong patterns. The way a doll face hangs from a closet hook, the way a penny rolls and stops at the lip of a rug. I wake up with my hands curled like I am still holding something, like I might still be able to hold Johnny's sleeve and pull him back. I never can. There's a small regret I carry more than anything else. The moment I could have been brave and called him a fool and shoved him back into the car. Instead, I made the common choice to let curiosity and camaraderie and the strange thrift store bravery of youth decide, and the consequences are stitched into the pattern of my life. Sometimes I think of the figures on the shoulder as people with names, maybe brothers, maybe something we don't have a word for. Other times, I think of them as the house's hands, reaching out to add another thing to its altar. Either way, the ledger is incomplete. I don't know what happened to Johnny. I know the police have their files, and sometimes they call to say there are new leads, and sometimes they say nothing. I know Mia sends me pictures of the sky. I know that I don't sleep through thunderstorms anymore, because in the sound of rain, I hear the scrape of wood. If there's a lesson here, it's not the kind you can sum up in a sentence. There are bad places that look like houses, and good intentions that look like chains. We are small, and our choices are smaller, and sometimes that's all it takes. I tell you this because the next time your ride stops at an abandoned house, you should listen to the first sound you hear, the one that isn't words. You should watch the way light falls across a porch step, and remember that thresholds are not just wood and nails. They are decisions, and decisions have weight. The road behind me was empty when we left that night, but the memory of it is crowded. I drive more carefully now. I carry a flashlight that sometimes feels like a joke. I avoid that bend when I can. But the house sits there, patient, windows like eyes, and the soft, careful placing of things on its walls. Every so often, when I slow down, I see new objects, arranged as if the world had been tidied by an absent hand. I see the orange lamp through the trees, and for a single breath, I imagine Johnny sitting on the porch, hands in his pockets, patient and small, waiting for someone to come home. I don't know if he is waiting. I don't know if he'll ever come back. But I remember the sound of his voice the night it all began, still soft, saying something like, "Come on," and I can still feel the graze of his sleeve in my hand. Some nights I wake and listen to the dark to make sure I didn't dream it. Some nights I drive by, hoping it's just a story that will stop being true. Neither has worked. I went back once more with a camera and a pair of boots because habit makes cowards of us and because grief makes liars who promise to finish what they started. The house was closed then. No light, no movement. The front door was nailed shut, as if someone had decided to keep the inside from getting bored. I stood on the road and took a picture from the safety of my car. The photograph came out fuzzy, like an old Polaroid, and when I looked at the preview on my phone, there was a pale hand in the window, 2 fingers pressed to the glass as if testing it. I haven't gone back since. I am not brave. I am not innocent. I am not sure what to do with the memory that clamps down on me at odd times. Like now, as I sit here writing this, the house a pixel at the edge of a map. All I can give is the story, a shape for the thing without answers. If you pass that way, and your headlights fall on a porch that shouldn't be lit, maybe you will slow. Maybe you will stop. Maybe your friend will step out and walk towards something they can't name. If you do stop, if your ride stops at an abandoned house, keep your hands on the wheel. Keep the engine warm. Don't let curiosity practice on you like a thief. If someone says they know where the phone is, smile and drive away. Don't be the person who lets a promise slide into the trees. I say these things not because I know the right way, but because I remember the wrong ones so well. I remember Johnny's profile against the dark, and the way his laugh was small when the house smiled back. I remember thinking, impossibly, that we'd find a story and bring it home like a souvenir. We did find a story. We brought it back too late. Sometimes I still wake expecting him to call, to text a dumb meme, to tell us to stop overthinking things. The phone never rings. The number marked unknown still exists in my memory like a bruise. If I ever tell it out loud to someone who knows the road, they will say we should have done X or Y, called someone, stayed in the car, driven off. They would be right. But it's hard to say when the thing that beckons isn't obviously evil, when it is made of small lost things and the soft patience of darkness. That's what makes it dangerous. It doesn't look like danger at first. It looks like a place that remembers names. Sometimes, when I'm honest, I wonder if the house keeps names like a ledger because it needs them. I wonder if our choices are not just ours, but a currency of a trade we never agreed to. I know how that sounds. It sounds like superstition. It sounds like something people tell themselves after they do something they can't explain. But then I think about the shrine, about the coins, and about the single word text that said stay, and I can't shrug the feeling that there was a patience there and a calculation. It's possible Johnny left of his own will. It's possible he was taken. It's possible the truth is something that sits between words and won't ever be dragged into light. I keep going back in my mind to the moment when his hand brushed mine and he walked away. That split second is a thing I can't fix. It's the hinge. It is the decision I would give anything to undo. I tell the story because of that hinge and because I live with the knowledge of what a small choice can do. I tell it because if you ever find yourself at the threshold, the right choice is probably the one that keeps you on the near side. Keep the engine idling. Keep your friends close. Keep your hands where you can see them. And if, despite all of that, your ride stops at an abandoned house, remember the sound that isn't words and go the opposite way. I say this, and the memory of that night keeps coming, relentless as summer flies. I still see the pale window like an eye that doesn't quite focus. Sometimes, when the road is empty and my hands are steady, I'll whisper Johnny's name into the dark and wait to hear something answer. Most nights, nothing does. Once, though, a light blinked on in the window, soft, orange, and for a terrifying second, I thought I saw a hand lifted, slow, deliberate, as if to say hello or come closer. I drove away before I knew why I was moving. The road swallowed the house. The field closed its mouth. The town stitched itself back together. But the ledger sits there, and I'm marked in it, in a small way, a note in the margin. The next time someone says they have a flat or a dead battery, maybe they'll learn from me and drive straight past. Maybe they won't. Curiosity is a stubborn thing. I can't tell you what to believe. All I can tell you is what I remember. The house, the shrine, the two figures on the shoulder, Johnny's sleeve in my hand. The rest is made of guesses and fear. I live with the guilt and the wondering. I live with the way headlights look a little too much like eyes now. I live with the simple, terrible knowledge that sometimes a ride will stop at an abandoned house, and if it does, it's not always safe to get out. When I think of Johnny now, most of the time I picture him laughing, the sort of grin that lights up the cigarette smoke and makes everything smaller. Sometimes, for a second, I picture him at the hollow, hands full of pennies, rearranging things like a person trying to make a home in a place that doesn't belong to them. Both images are true, and neither explains anything. If you live near Route 47, there's a house with a sagging porch and a window that catches headlights like an eye. If your ride stops there, if your friends get out and someone points toward the trees, do not follow. Drive. Keep the engine warm. Keep the radio on. Learn from our mistake. I still hear the scraping sometimes, soft, patient, like a pen running along paper. It may be nothing. It may be everything. Either way, it keeps me awake. It keeps me honest about the one choice I would give anything to unmake. I shouldn't end this with a handful of warnings and a pocket full of regrets, but that's the truth. The house took something from us, and it left nothing behind except questions that feel heavier every year. I kept those questions like a stone pressed to my chest, waiting for time to warm them, soften them, make them easier to carry. It never did. And the worst part? There's still more. The sheriff's face when we mentioned the coins, how he paused like he'd heard it before. the anonymous call the next morning telling us to leave it alone, and the photograph on my camera I still can't bring myself to open. It's been months, and the file sits there untouched because I'm scared I already know what's in it. But that's a story for another night. If you want the next part, and trust me, it only gets darker, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the new videos I drop every single day. Until then, stay curious and stay away from houses that watch you back.